ended up getting on the show, which was crazy. Got on the Bake Off, went over to London and shot for 6 weeks, and was, just had the time of my life. Had never been to the UK. And when I got home, I was like, I don't want to go back to doing hair. I feel like this is my actual calling. Like, this is what I should be doing. And it was from that moment on that I kind of started transitioning my hair clients into food clients. So I started doing baby showers and making cakes for people's birthdays.
Chris, it's so great to have you here. I feel like I already know you. I mean, when I'm like doing the prep for these things, I'm like, oh my God. And then we know Shabnam. I mean, and
Yeah.
any friend of hers is a friend of mine.
Yeah, we have a lot of people in the same circle. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. How actually do you know Shabnam?
So Shab and Babette, the three of us kind of became really close only a little over a year ago, which is kind of crazy because we did a project together called Peeled, which is the first all vegan culinary cooking competition show, and we just kind of bonded really quick on set. And then once we left set, we were like, okay, so like let's stay connected. And we just started doing like Instagram content and just like became family really quick. And that's it just stuck. And we've been really close ever since.
That's amazing because I would have never guessed it had only been a year because I see your content all together. And, when I met her, I met Shabin last June at the Vegan Women's Summit for the first time, but we had a mutual friend who else is in LA. And her and I just hit it off immediately. So she's been on this show. And then when I asked her for an intro for Babette, she's like, oh, well, don't you know about Chris? And I'm like, well, yeah, let's get him on too. So yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a family affair. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
you
kind of
guys really, I just work.
yeah, and that's kind of how we are. We're like, oh well, if you're doing that, then we should all do that too. And we're just kind of like always just trying to support each other. And I think it's weird though, like in the vegan space, when you meet people, you automatically kind of start at a level that you don't with other people normally, or like even before I was vegan, like you would meet people and you don't have that baseline connection, right? But when you're in the vegan space, you're starting off with like so many similarities. It's very easy to connect. But I feel like the three of us connect in a different way. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's interesting you said that because, well, I turned vegetarian at the age of 7 and vegan at 15. I'm 43 now. And my whole life, I kind of felt like there was something wrong with me and my inability to really connect with people. And it wasn't until now that there's, I'm just in all these vegan circles that I'm like, you know what? There is something really bonding about just this lens through which we see the world do you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
totally.
Did things shift for you in terms of, how you related to people once you went vegan? How did that?
It's interesting. I think like when I first went vegan, I really probably didn't pay. It's weird because a lot of people, when they first go vegan, they're angry, right? They're
Yes.
like the angry vegans. They want everyone around them to go vegan right away. And I don't think for me it was really like that. I think I was probably very similar to you, where I was already vegetarian. The dairy was the last thing that I was kind of holding on to. And I had transitioned from a really, I'm from the South, and so we ate a lot of chicken, a lot of barbecue, a lot of we ate a lot of meat, and so for me, I stopped eating those things at a younger age, just for health reasons. I was very overweight as a kid, and so I. I remember going to the doctor and the doctor being like, "Oh, your weight was 240 pounds or 220 pounds," and I'm like, I was in eighth grade. I'm like, that's not right. And so, it was at that point that I was like, okay, I'm going down to chicken and fish. I, cut out red meat, I cut out pork. And I kind of started my journey then, right? It took me a long time to get to where I am now. But I don't think that I went into that like angry vegan stage until a little bit further down, which I've only been vegan for about 5 years. And so for me, um, I'm probably in a little bit of that angry vegan stage now, but I don't really ever put it out there, right?
Hmm.
I get kind of angry in my brain
Hmm.
and in my spirit. Like I'm like, why don't you guys see what I see? All of the science is there, especially nowadays. Like now it's so easy to look at the science. 20
Yeah.
years ago, we had none of these scientific reviews that were going on. We had none of the evidence to back up, what the crazy vegans were saying. But now all of the science is there. And so for me, I'm just like, just watch this documentary and
You're right.
make your own choices after that. But I think when it comes to finding that alignment with people, as long as people are willing to listen, I think that's fine. Like if people are open to listening and making small changes, that's kind of all I ask of them. Like if you can stop consuming meat 3 times a day and maybe you swap a plant-based dish in once a day for one of those meals and you start there, cool. I'm not going to yell at you from my pedestal if
Yeah.
you're making changes, because a lot of people I feel like just don't want to make any changes. They don't
Mhm.
want to make any sacrifice. And we live in a world right now where there's so much suffering on an animal level, a human level, especially an environmental level, where we all have to make a little bit of change somehow.
Right. For the good of the collective, like even
Right.
not thinking about animals for those who aren't quite connected there, but all right. Yes. And I want to dive into some parts of your story, and I want to talk about your entrepreneurial journey because that's always of interest to me, being an entrepreneur. But first, I have a little lightning round. Are you up for it?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right. What's your go-to vegan butter?
Miyoko's.
I knew you were going to say that. All right. A fun fact or quirk that most people may not know about you.
I was a hairstylist for 8 years. That's what I did. Yeah.
Okay. What are three of your healthiest habits?
Oh, three of my healthiest habits. I always, if I commit to something, I always follow through. If I don't want to do something like go on a hike or go to, a Pilates class, which are pretty much my two forms of physical activity, if I don't want to do them, those are the days that I definitely go do them because that
Mm.
means that I need them. What's the third one? I try to incorporate as many plants into my daily diet as possible. And so I know that might sound kind of crazy because I'm vegan, but you can be vegan and eat completely no plants at all during the day. And I know that's probably crazy too. But yeah, I try to eat as many like living things throughout the day as possible.
Love it. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to being your healthiest, happiest self at this point?
Probably getting off my ass, off my phone, and outside.
Mm.
That's probably my biggest thing.
What's a pet peeve or something that is a little triggering to you?
Um, Wildly enough, being in the food space, I can't stand hearing people eat. Like the sound
Mm.
of people's like food moving through their mouth while they're like salivating and stuff. Not for me.
Do you know there's a word for that? And I was interviewing Toni Okamoto, and she has that too because I was asking her how to eat ramen noodles because she loves ramen. I'm like, oh my God, every time I eat ramen, it's like a disaster zone, you know?
Yeah,
And she said she's got that same thing, and there's a name for it, and I can't think of it. You don't know it,
yeah.
do you?
It's actually a thing where you don't like certain sounds from a bunch of different things, right?
Uh,
So it could definitely be the food thing, but there's like an actual disorder. My friend has it.
oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. Learn something new.
yeah.
All right, last one. It's your last day on Earth. What do you eat as your final meal, including your dessert?
Mm. I would probably have some delicious pizza for sure. And then for dessert, I probably want some type of really scrumptious cake. Yeah.
Flavor? Are you a chocolate or vanilla?
I'm kind of open with flavor. Yeah, I'm
Mm.
very I'm very versatile when it comes to flavor. I'm not like hardcore sold on chocolate, but I would never push it away. And then any other like like fruity, like I could do a fruity flavor, but I could also I'm kind of like a pretty basic, like give me a vanilla cake with a
Mhm.
nice filling, and I'm sold on that too.
All right. All right. And are you
Yeah.
a frosting lover? Do you like the frosting part or the cake part?
Cake part.
Me
I'm a
too.
minimal frosting. Yeah,
Me
minimal
too.
frosting.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. All right. That was fun. All right. I want to talk about your journey to Betta with Betta, which I love saying. I'm sure you hear that a lot. So can you take it back? And first of all, I know your kind of love or passion for food started young. And did you call your grandmother Mimi?
Uh-huh, I
So
did.
I did too. And
Yeah.
my grandmother my Mimi died just a year ago, a day before her 101st birthday. And she was a
Wow.
firecracker to the day she died. She was amazing. So
It must
I
be something in the name.
must be something in the name because yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of found your interest in food and when you were young, how did that progress and turn into an actual business? Because that came much later. You thought you were going to be a hairstylist, or you were, but that's where you thought you were going. Can you talk a little bit about that and the journey to LA?
Yeah. So I had both sets of grandparents. My mom's parents, Mimi, she taught me everything I know about baking. And I was kind of the only grandkid that was actually in the kitchen with her, like ever really interested in it. And so it was a lot of time where just her and I were bonding. And when she passed away actually when I was in eighth grade. And it was from like that moment where I started doing all of the Christmases, all of the birthdays, all like
Mm.
anything that she would normally bake for. I started filling in. And so my other set of grandparents, they were actually restaurant owners. And so whenever it was a holiday from school or anything of that nature, we would be at the restaurant, in the kitchen, or helping on the floor. And that's kind of where all of these passions for food, my family's always revolved around food, right? Like whenever there was some kind of holiday or whenever it was somebody's birthday, it always revolved around sitting around a table full of food. Graduate high school, thought I wanted to be a hairstylist, move out to LA, go to hair school, do hair for 8 years, like it the first couple, never really like fell in love with it. And all along I was posting on social media like the bakes that I was doing and just different little cakes and things. My husband was in my husband is in the entertainment industry, and somebody from his casting days reached out to him and said, "Hey, they're casting for the Bake Off. Do you think your husband would ever be up for it?" And so I went through the submission process, ended up getting on the show, which was crazy. Got on the Bake Off, went over to London and shot for 6 weeks and was, just had the time of my life, had never been to the UK. And when I got home, I was like, I don't want to go back to doing hair. I feel like this is my actual calling. Like, this is what I should be doing. And it was from that moment on that I kind of started transitioning my hair clients into food clients. So I started doing baby showers and making cakes for people's birthdays and just doing little kind of like side gigs. But I transitioned completely away from hair and started my own company where I just really was passionate about what I was doing for the first time in a long time.
It's amazing. And we talk about passion and then we talk about a calling. Do you see a difference in the two of those?
I I mean, I think yeah, I do. I do because a passion can definitely be something that you're doing every day that is fulfilling to you, that you're making a living from. Maybe you're not making a living from it. Maybe your passion isn't something that's providing an income, but then your calling might be to help underserved communities or help, animals, and they might not actually align, but you do both.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm curious, and when you turned vegetarian, what about your family? I haven't really heard you talk about, were they on board with it? Did they just say, okay, do what you got to do? What was that
Yeah,
like?
I mean, it wasn't so when I was still living at home, I was definitely still like eating chicken. I was still in the pescatarian phase. And it wasn't until I moved out to LA, started living on my own, that I was really more on that
Okay.
that journey to where I am now. So yeah, I don't know how much of that was influenced by my surroundings. You know, I was in Florida at the time. Florida has a great vegan community, but where I was growing up and just the people that I was surrounded with, it wasn't really something, you know, in my foreground.
Yeah, and I also, I love to explore kind of the powerful chapters in our lives and big aha moments and realizations. One of those, I'm assuming, was you also coming out. Is that
Yeah,
something, when did that happen and what was that experience like for you?
yeah, that was a really interesting one because it happened, I believe, in when I was 18. So I think I was still in high school. I may have been out of high school. I can't quite put my finger on it. But I remember my mom just sitting down with me and she had gone to my sister and asked my sister if she knew anything that she wanted to share. My sister and I have an 18-year age gap. So I would go over to my sister's house and I would spend the night with her. And I did have a boyfriend at that time. I was in high school, as a matter of fact, because now I'm thinking back on something I haven't thought of in a really long time. And I would go over to my sister's house and I would spend the night. And that's when I would see, you know, this guy that I had been dating. And so she was like, Mom, if you have any questions, you should probably just ask Chris. And so my mom sat me down and she's like, you know, like what's going on. And I grew up very religious. I grew up in a very religious, you know, family. And it was really difficult at first. They didn't really know what to do with it, you know, and how to process it. So it took some time for them to come to terms with it. But once they did, it was, you know, it's been a really great relationship with my family these days. Like my mom and my dad, like they love and support my husband. Like it's just really wonderful. And I think that it took my mom actually was working in the nonprofit sector and she actually worked for this massive church in Orlando. And one of the people that were on staff at the church was actually a lesbian who had a wife, who had kids, who
Really?
and it saw like it took my mom seeing this woman have a completely normal life,
Mm.
right? And so that I don't think back then people really understood like, oh yeah, you couldn't get married then, but you can get married and you can have children and you can create a family and you know it's just another way of life. And I think it wasn't really until my mom saw that mirrored in somebody else's life that she was like, oh, I get it. And again, it was also unpacking all of those biblical teachings that, you know, were just horrible translations of the actual Bible and not fact. And just coming to terms with all of that. So it was definitely a journey. I think, you know, for me, it's a constant journey to just kind of living comfortable with myself and feeling like I am who I'm supposed to be.
And so if I asked you, who are you? Beyond all the accomplishments and this amazing bio and the celebrities and these, I want to talk about some of these desserts for Elton John's Oscar party. I mean, how incredible is that? But beyond all of that, your being, who are you? Like, how would you describe who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm somebody who is just compassionate, that has always had like just a really big heart for other people. And I think that, you know, even now, knowing where I am as, you know, a vegan who is into animal rights and just advocating for the underserved regardless, I think that my parents can look now and be like, this all makes sense, like just because of how I used to be with my dog as a kid and how I used to just connect
Mm.
with animals on a different level and just with people. I was always just kind of with the underdogs, you know? And so it makes sense now for me to kind of be in the position that I am, feeling like I'm just kind of here to serve others. You know, I feel like I always kind of want to be the person that says, you're welcome, but what can I do for you now?
Mm,
And so just coming with like a mind of, I feel like I'm just somebody with a mind of service, and somebody who just wants to help people.
love it. Okay, so back to the Great American Baking Show experience. Was that, I mean, you're in this is a big show, you're in front of the camera. How did that feel to be on that show? And what did you kind of learn about yourself? What did you take away from that?
It was crazy. It is, it's a big experience. It's a really big experience that, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity. I had never been on camera. I had never been in front of cameras. I had never done any kind of Instagram video. So for me, it was just all like, it was all brand new.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really funny because that was actually the time that I realized that I enjoyed being on camera and that I liked it and that it wasn't a scary thing for me, and that I, I'd always done theater in like high school and done performing arts when I was younger, but it was never like on camera. It was just all stage stuff. And so being in the tent really showed me that I'm able to do big things and I can set goals and accomplish big goals. And so I think for me, it was, no, I didn't win the season that I was on, but looking back now and seeing everything that I've been able to do since then
Mm-hmm.
and the impact that I've been able to have, it's because I went into that tent and I realized that I was able to do big things.
Mm. Amazing. All right. So you get back to LA. You're like, okay, this is not my calling is food. You start to transition your clients. And then how was this company born?
Yeah, it was kind of born. My husband's from the East Coast, and Betta with Butta just kind of feels like something you would hear somebody say, like, "Oh, well, that's Betta with Butta." And I think that a lot of times in our space, we think that we a lot of times in the vegan world, we think that there's like things that we have to give up or that we take away, and so it just kind of it's kind of a symbolism that like, nah, you could still have it. It's better with butter, like we can still do it. And so, yeah, it kind of just blossomed from started a website, putting recipes up there, and kind of went from there. It became something where I could showcase what I had going on and different outreach projects that we were doing, and a place where people could come and order cakes. And we started a cake initiative over quarantine when everybody was kind of locked inside. We realized that like there were kids celebrating birthdays that wouldn't get birthday cakes because businesses were closed and parents were out of jobs. And so we started the cake initiative, which was giving people free birthday cakes who were in need at the time. And that initiative spread globally, and we started doing it in different parts of the world and around the US with just different home bakers who wanted to get in on the project. And I think that's what people should realize. Like, my platform was very small at the time, but it was with a small platform that one person caught on and another person caught on. And just the feel good movement like started because people wanted to do something that was kind for other people.
Amazing. Okay. And you said that dairy was your last thing to go. And
Yeah.
I know you were kind of also a little unsure of, can you do these things without dairy and eggs? And what
Yeah.
was it that finally kind of changed your mind about that and had you go all the way?
Yeah. So what finally changed my mind was watching What the Health. We watched the documentary, and I was even somebody who would like make my husband a steak or like a pork chop. And so I wasn't even somebody who was like no meat in the house. It
Mhm.
was, I was very like whatever about it. And he was the one that said, we got to cut all of this out. Like, we got to just quit. And so it was after that that we literally went to the refrigerator and just cleaned it out. And that was it. And we went from there, and I figured out how to do it. And it was actually really exciting for me because after a while, you get into a process where you're like, okay, a cake, you throw
Right.
some ingredients together, you know what to do. But then when you're like, wait a second, I don't know what to do now because I've
Yeah.
taken my, my eggs out. Butter's very easy to replace, but it's the eggs in every
Mhm.
recipe where you're like, wait a second, what do I do? It became fun again because I was learning all over again.
All right, well, you say that about baking, throwing some things together, but from my personal experience, baking does not work like that because it is so challenging. It really is like a science. And I just read the book, The Alchemist, and so I've got
Hmm.
alchemy in my head. I mean, it's baking is not an easy task.
Yeah.
How, yeah, like, and you got interested in it when you were a young kid, but I mean, it's like scientific. So but the fact that you had kind of, mastered it in a sense, right? And now you got to say, hey, now I get to experiment, and that you saw it as more of an adventure and a challenge. Do you want to give us some tips, like while we're on this topic about the egg thing? Because I know I do the flax thing. Forget it. I just I don't even try anymore. I blend I do nice cream. That is my only dessert that I make, Chris. Just
Nice.
letting you know.
Yeah.
Because you just blend it and it's just like, okay, how much milk do I add? Or, how much soy
Yeah.
milk or whatever. But yes, can you give us some tips?
Well, so the egg replacer is a really interesting thing because it's different from every single bake you're trying to do, right? If you're making a cookie that calls for an egg yolk, you can just take it out. Like you can take that egg yolk completely out of the
Hmm.
recipe and you don't have to do anything else to it. A lot of different cookie recipes that actually call for eggs, you'd be surprised that you could just completely eliminate them and replace the liquid in that egg. So most eggs are about 50 grams a piece. So when your most recipes will call for 2 eggs, which is 100 grams. So if you're just going to eliminate those eggs from your cookie recipe, the only thing you want to do is replace that liquid in your
Hmm.
recipe with an additional 100 grams of liquid. So that's cookies. When it comes to cakes, the best thing that you can do for cakes is baking soda and apple cider vinegar.
Mm.
So baking soda, just like when we were in elementary school and we did the volcano with the eruption and it was all different colors, that's exactly what happens in a cake. And so if you are trying to take your eggs out and replace it, you're going to typically do that with baking soda and a little bit of acid. And so I do that by using apple cider vinegar. Usually for a cake, it's about 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar to about 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And that's pretty much all the leavening agents you'll need for the entire cake. That would be for about, a regular 8-inch size cake. And that's simple. And like it's really simple when you get it, right? It's about getting it first that is the challenging part.
That is so great. Like that is so clear. And I will try it. I will get myself back in the baking game for just one try, I think. But the aquafaba, can we talk about
Yeah,
that for a moment? Because that
yeah.
is something, it's so crazy. I mean, that ingredient has been around forever. And yet in the last, just year or two, really, I mean, it's everywhere. Can you talk about when you discovered how that works and how you use it?
Yeah, so I use aquafaba as like the replacement. So you can make macarons out of it. If you went vegan and you're like, oh, I'm never going to have my favorite French macaron again, you can make it out of aquafaba. You can use anytime you're needing like an egg white replacer in a recipe, aquafaba 90% of the time, if it's whipped up properly, is going to do the trick. So yes, that's a great one. And I think for me, I in like thinking of a recipe off the top of my head, I use it in my brioche recipe because brioche is an enriched dough that you're going to have eggs and butter in. And so I use it as the egg replacer in my brioche recipe. And that's typically that was my like aha moment for aquafaba was when I was creating my brioche recipe. And I learned that actually through a baker who's not vegan
Hmm.
out of Australia. And she's one of my good friends. And she actually just does, she had a bakery and she just kind of created what she called allergy friendly baked goods. So she had a whole line of allergy friendly products in her bakery. And yeah, I learned that little trick through her.
Oh, so interesting. All right.
Yeah.
And another question I just thought of. I mean, you look very much fit in shape, not overweight. How do you bake and not, how do you bake for a living and stay lean?
So I don't do a ton of baking right now for like, just to play around. Back in the day, I would do like baking for the Instagram, and that was, that was hard. I did a lot of giving away of baked goods, and my husband was going to the office at the time, and so I would send him to work with like a ton of things. But now I don't do a ton of it, and I'm really into using, like this morning I just shot a pancake recipe. So it's like, it's full of protein, plant powered protein, and I sweetened it with banana and dates. So, for me, it's really about like, if it's something that we're consuming, for ourselves, I do try to be mindful because, I'm constantly trying the latest chocolate on the market, and I'm constantly trying like all of the latest, goodies that are coming to market. And so I do have to be mindful that,
Mhm.
what I'm eating, because overweight is definitely in my blood. And so I do have to be very conscious of what I'm putting into my mouth and how much I'm exercising on a daily
Mhm.
basis, or I won't look fit and lean,
Mhm. Mhm.
So for me, it's all about moderation. It's
Mhm.
constantly in the back of my mind. I think somebody who used to be very overweight as a young person, it's something that lives with me to this day. And I think about every single thing that goes into my mouth. The difference is now is that I feel enjoyment when I eat.
Mm.
And so I don't necessarily, it's kind of like, it's almost like it's a good awareness
Mhm.
instead of like, feeling bad about what I'm
Right.
eating. It's a good awareness.
It sounds like you have a really healthy at this point relationship with food and your body, and you're
Yeah.
mindful about it. And when you do make a choice, it's a conscious choice. And so if
Yeah.
you're going to eat a piece of cake with real sugar or whatever, you're choosing it and you're going to enjoy it, and you're not going to beat yourself up about it, and you're going to be mindful.
Right.
And yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other, so you use the banana and dates as sweeteners, any other tips on baking with maybe alternative flours, like instead of white all-purpose flour, any tricks, because all these different flours have very different textures and work
Sure.
differently. Any little ones that you can give us?
Yeah, so something like the Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, that's a really great replacement in just your standard baking stuff. So if you're looking to do like cookies or a cake, or even I use that when I'm making sauces. If I'm making something like on the stove that needs flour for thickening, or if I'm making like a roux, you can even use that gluten-free flour, and it works identical in like cooking recipes. So that would be my biggest one, because it's the most, I would say, no fuss, right? Like you can get really technical and really fancy and buy all these separate flours to make your own gluten-free blend that's going to have no grit to it and, be amazing. But you really have to have some time
Mhm.
under your belt when it comes to baking. So for me, it's that 1-to-1 baking mix from Bob's Red Mill. That's probably the best. You can also, like the pancakes that I made this morning that I'm going to be doing a video for, it's just ground oats, and so that's the flour that I'm using in
Mm.
these pancakes. And so simple swaps like that for things like pancakes or waffles, you can still enjoy it, right, and not feel like, oh, I just had a plate of pancakes for breakfast. No, you actually just had oatmeal for breakfast that you
Right.
prepared in a different way.
Mm. I love that. Do you enjoy making those types of videos for Instagram, or is it more of a pain in the butt than anything? I'm curious.
No, I do. I like it. I like making content. I think it's fun. I enjoy like giving people like recipes that taste like normal food, like normal pancakes, but they're healthier for you. And so I think, I wish we had these resources when we were young. Like we didn't have the interwebs the way that people do now. And so I think it's cool that we get to, be helpful and show people like different ways of doing things that can give you a better outcome that don't require sacrifice.
Mhm. And I did see on your Instagram is fabulous, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
obvious that you actually enjoy making those videos. I also saw you did a collaboration with V-Dog. Can you tell us about Sis? Is your dog? Yes.
Yeah, she's our dog. She's 8. So we rescued her when she was 6 months. So we've had her for 7.5 years now, and
Mhm.
she's the little baby. She does she kind of rules the nest around here. But yeah, she's our little everything.
Yeah. And is she
Yeah.
plant-based now?
She's not plant-based. She was back in the day. We had her on a plant-based diet for a while, but yeah, we did incorporate meat back into her diet probably maybe 4 years ago.
Got it.
Yeah.
And and can you talk a little bit about how you provided vegan desserts for Elton John's Oscar party? Like, how amazing is that? I mean, are these all connections that you made at first through your hairstyling, or how did this all come to be? Or
Yeah, no. So I actually got an opportunity to do this program with Good Morning America. It didn't end up happening, but with that like that project that was going on, I had to source like a massive kitchen. And so in the works of sourcing that massive kitchen, I met this woman who bakes bread for like everyone in LA. And I was going to rent the kitchen out from her, and she wanted to introduce me to this gentleman. And I was like, okay, cool. And he happened to be there one day. And his name is Chef Wayne. And he actually does Elton John's Oscar party every single year. And when she first told me this, I was like, oh, come on. Like, this lady's just blowing steam, up my butt. And I met him. He got my information. He had sampled my cookies that day without me knowing. He was there like earlier and told me, how great they were. And then he ended up calling me like a few weeks later and saying that he had a gig for me. And the gig was Elton John's Oscar party. And he wanted me to provide all of the vegan desserts for it. And so that was, I believe, 4 years ago. So, it was just kind of one of those very LA moments of in the right place at the right time. Met Chef Wayne, and yeah, I've done some really cool projects with him ever since.
and so does Elton John for his parties? I mean, is he vegan? He's not vegan, is he? He just wants to provide
I
vegan
don't,
desserts. Is this an LA party thing that they always
right.
have the vegan desserts there?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a LA party. And so there's, it's one of those things where you come, there's like a red carpet, there's an actual viewing of the Oscars, and then after the actual Oscars is when all of the celebrities come from the actual Oscars show, because it's a really big night for him to raise money for his AIDS foundation that he runs. And so you have to like say, yes, I'm coming, and I'm a vegan, or I'll have the vegetarian dish. It's like going to a wedding, right?
Got
And
it.
so we know there's like 150 vegans coming. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I get it. And then you did Steven Tyler's Grammy party too?
So Steven Tyler actually he had a party, I believe it was the week following the Oscars, but he has a charity called Janie's Fund that raises money for some organizations that, and I believe it's like in dedication of his daughter.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was able to provide some things for them as well.
Amazing. Amazing. So
Yeah.
speaking of charities, where are you focused on these days and moving forward? What projects are you working on?
Yeah, working a lot right now with PETA, trying to really just walk a little bit more with them this year and figure out some more projects to get involved with through their organization. And also just really trying to stay cognizant of these community fridges that we have here in Los Angeles. A project that I did towards the end of the year with the company called Board Cow. They're a milk alternative company, and they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we do this every year. We would love to have you stock one of our fridges. and it's a nationwide thing. So no matter where you live, you can just go on your computer and type in, like you're in Miami, you can type in Miami community fridge, and it's going to show you like wherever there's community fridges in your area. And for me, it's like the really easiest way to be a direct source for people that are dealing with food insecurity. And so even since I've done the project with Board Cow, we've just been trying to pass by this one specific community fridge as frequent as possible. You know, I think we all kind of overbuy at times at the grocery store, and it's just really easy to be a little helpful in that way. So I'm gonna, be trying to work a lot more with that company that places the fridges around town, and it's a really easy way, especially around holidays, to provide food for people who are food insecure and to help out as much as possible.
Amazing. Is there any
Yeah.
final thoughts you'd like to share? Or how people can find and they can order from your website if they want to order
Yeah.
baked goods?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to reach out to me on Instagram, Vegan Chef Chris Tucker. And I don't have a ton of stuff that's for sale right now on the website because a lot of it is more, I'm doing a lot more like in-house catering these days and more events and things like that. And I've kind of gotten away from doing all of the shipping that I used to do. But yeah, would love to connect with people on Instagram and go from there.
Well, Chris, I hope to get to meet you in person one day soon. I'm sure I'll make a trip out to LA at some point. It's been so wonderful speaking with you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you as well. And or we'll be in Miami for something plant-based this year, I'm sure.
I hope so. Hopefully we'll get
Yeah.
some sun for you because we've had crazy weather. But yeah, yes, I'm sure we'll meet up soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ella.
Thank you.
Hey.